HOA president lost it when I blocked her entry. Cop showed up, saw it all, and laughed. Have you ever found yourself caught in a ridiculous power struggle, where a simple act of protecting your own property escalates into an absurd display of entitlement, turning a quiet neighborhood into a battlefield of wills? I'm Alex Chun, and my large, corner lot in the meticulously manicured community of Whispering Pines was my sanctuary, my canvas. It wasn't manicured, not in the way the HOA preferred. Instead, it was a sprawling, vibrant tapestry of life, a prize-winning orchid greenhouse, a riot of exotic blooms, and a sprawling butterfly garden, a living, breathing ecosystem designed to attract and sustain local pollinators. My property was bordered by a small, unpaved private lane, a gravel path that connected my greenhouse directly to a quiet side road. It was my personal access, essential for deliveries and the delicate transport of my precious plants. However, some residents of Whispering Pines, including the HOA president, had taken to using it as a convenient shortcut to their garages, ignoring the private property signs I'd discreetly placed. Then, Mrs. Eleanor Vance arrived. Eleanor, the newly elected, self-anointed queen of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association, saw my vibrant, wild butterfly garden not as an ecological marvel, but as an unacceptable deviation. She was all sharp angles and sharper pronouncements, a woman whose perfectly coiffed blonde hair and designer suits screamed unapproachable perfection. Her first official act, it seemed, was to send me a curt, imperious letter demanding the immediate remediation of my private lane. It was, according to her, excessively dusty, a visual blight, and a clear violation of community aesthetic guidelines. Her ultimate, thinly veiled demand was for me to pave my private lane, transforming it into a pristine, uniform concrete thoroughfare, and to contain my butterfly garden, effectively making my private property a public access point and stripping it of its wild, natural beauty. Her tone was dripping with condescension, her words a thinly veiled threat against everything I held dear. She looked at my garden, a testament to biodiversity, as if it were a festering wound on the pristine landscape she envisioned. I tried to reason with her, calmly explaining the ecological importance of the butterfly garden, its role in supporting local pollinator populations, and the permeable nature of the unpaved lane, which was crucial for managing rainwater runoff and preventing erosion. I even provided scientific articles and letters of endorsement from local botanical societies, highlighting the rare orchid species I cultivated and the vital role my garden played in local conservation efforts. Eleanor merely waved a dismissive hand, her perfectly manicured nails glinting. "Mr. Chun," she purred, her voice a brittle whisper of disdain, "your hobbies are simply not suited for the elevated standards of Whispering Pines. We are building a community of distinction, and frankly, your dusty track and overgrown weeds detract from our property values. The bylaws are clear. All access points must be paved, and landscaping must be uniform." Her words, delivered with an air of unassailable authority, left no room for debate. She was not interested in environmental science or personal passion. She was interested in control and conformity. The true nightmare began on a scorching summer morning, just as I was preparing to transport a delicate, prize-winning orchid, a rare specimen I'd spent years cultivating, to a prestigious botanical competition. I stepped outside, only to be met with a scene of utter devastation. A crew of landscapers, directed by a smirking Eleanor, were actively clearing my private lane. They weren't just clearing, they were widening it, digging up sections of my butterfly garden that spilled onto the path, destroying rare orchid saplings I was cultivating for future competitions. My meticulously placed pollinator-friendly plants were being ripped out, their delicate wings crushed under heavy machinery. Worst of all, a brand-new, imposing "no parking" sign, emblazoned with the HOA logo, was hammered into the ground on my side of the lane, directly blocking my own greenhouse access. My heart sank, a cold dread seeping into my bones. This wasn't just an annoyance. It was an act of pure, malicious vandalism, a deliberate defacement of my art, and a direct threat to my livelihood. As I stared at the wreckage, a glint of white caught my eye. Tucked beneath a pile of uprooted butterfly bushes was a discarded, official-looking county notice. It wasn't a "no parking" sign. It was a no-through-traffic wetland protection zone notice issued by the county's Environmental Protection Agency, specifically for a different, unapproved shortcut. This shortcut, I realized with a surge of cold fury, was a muddy, informal track Eleanor had been using for months to bypass a longer route. A track that cut directly through a sensitive wetland area that bordered the back of her property and filtered water for the entire community's pristine lake. My blood ran cold. Eleanor had been illegally creating her own shortcut through a protected environmental zone, and now she was trying to formalize my private lane as a public thoroughfare to deflect attention from her own violations. And then, a chilling detail. I found a secret, hand-drawn map in the debris, hastily sketched by Eleanor, detailing her illegal shortcut through the wetland, along with notes about diverting attention and establishing new precedents. This wasn't just about my path. It was a calculated, high-stakes conspiracy, threatening not only my property, but a vital ecological habitat and the community's shared water supply. Armed with this irrefutable evidence, the photos of the destruction, the county notice, and Eleanor's incriminating map, I resolved to confront her publicly. I learned she had called an emergency HOA meeting, ostensibly to present a new traffic flow optimization plan and to formalize community access points, which, I knew, included my private lane. I arrived, my evidence ready, just as Eleanor, radiating an almost unbearable smugness, began her presentation, complete with glossy diagrams of her proposed new traffic patterns. I waited for a lull, then stood up, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Eleanor, I stated, holding up the county notice, I believe this document and your recent actions sheds a rather inconvenient light on your traffic optimization plan. Her eyes, which had been sparkling with self-satisfaction, immediately narrowed. She quickly recovered, her voice sharp. Mr. Chun, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is a private HOA matter. You are disrupting our proceedings. She attempted to rally the other HOA members, painting me as a disgruntled, obsessive gardener, a nuisance to their refined community. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, this is precisely the kind of element we are trying to remove from our beautiful whispering pines. But just as she was about to call for me to be removed, the doors to the community hall swung open. Officer Miller, a local police officer who often patrolled the area and knew my garden well, he'd even brought his kids to see the butterflies once, walked in, his expression grim. He had been called by Mrs. Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed neighbor who had witnessed Eleanor's landscaping crew destroying my garden and recognized the county notice in my hand. Officer Miller, Eleanor shrieked, her face momentarily losing its composure. Thank goodness. This man is trespassing and disrupting our meeting. Officer Miller, however, ignored her, his gaze fixed on the county notice in my hand. Is that the wetland protection notice, Mr. Chun? He asked, his voice calm but authoritative. We've had a few complaints about unauthorized vehicle traffic through the protected wetland behind the Vance property. He then turned to Eleanor, his eyes narrowing. Mrs. Vance, we also have video footage from Mrs. Rodriguez's security camera showing you directing a landscaping crew to destroy Mr. Chin's private property and installing a sign that illegally blocks his access, all while you yourself are in violation of county environmental regulations. He then played the damning footage for everyone to see. Eleanor, in her designer clothes, pointing emphatically, overseeing the destruction, and then a quick cut to her own vehicle illegally driving through the muddy wetland shortcut. The gasps from the small crowd of onlookers were audible. Priscilla's face, which had been a mask of rigid self-importance, crumpled into a terrified, pale mess. Her jaw went slack, her eyes darting wildly, searching for an escape that wasn't there. This is a misunderstanding, she shrieked, her voice cracking. He's lying. It's a smear campaign. But her frantic denials were drowned out by the sudden arrival of a local news van. Cameras already rolling, alerted by a tip from Mrs. Rodriguez's quick-thinking daughter. The reporter, microphone in hand, immediately began broadcasting live, capturing Eleanor's panicked, desperate attempts to regain control. Then, Officer Miller delivered the final, crushing blow. Mrs. Vance, he stated, his voice low and dangerous, you are under arrest for destruction of private property, obstruction of justice, and multiple environmental violations. Your actions have directly jeopardized a protected wetland that filters the community's drinking water. We have multiple witnesses, irrefutable video evidence, and official county documents." He then paused, a small, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. "And frankly, Mrs. Vance, trying to block someone else's private lane while you're illegally driving through a protected wetland yourself, that's just rich." And then, Officer Miller, a man who had seen it all, let out a quiet, almost inaudible chuckle, a sound that, in the stunned silence of the room, seemed to echo with the absurdity of the situation. A uniformed officer, who had arrived with the news crew, moved to handcuff her. As she was being led away, she shrieked, "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I have rights." But her words were met with silence, save for the click of the handcuffs and the murmurs of the horrified residents. It was also revealed that Eleanor had a long-standing, bitter rivalry with Alex over local gardening competitions. His orchids had consistently outperformed her prized roses, fueling her personal vendetta and her desire to undermine his success. The fallout was swift and brutal. Eleanor was immediately stripped of her HOA presidency, her reign ending in public humiliation and a perp walk captured by local news. She faced severe criminal charges for property destruction, environmental violations, and obstruction, as well as civil lawsuits from the HOA for misuse of funds and from the affected homeowners for damages. Her carefully cultivated social circle, once so eager to bask in her reflected glory, publicly disavowed her, fearing association with a pariah. The HOA, now under new, more sensible leadership, immediately apologized to me and began the process of restoring my garden and path. Eleanor lost her position, her reputation, her social standing, and faced a future of crushing debt and legal battles. Her karma was a public, humiliating spectacle, a direct consequence of her petty tyranny and environmental disregard. I felt a profound sense of relief, a quiet satisfaction that justice, however painfully achieved, had prevailed. My garden began its slow recovery, and my orchids, though temporarily delayed, would eventually make it to the competition. The community, shaken but united, began the process of rebuilding trust and respecting the delicate balance of nature. In a world where bureaucratic power can become a weapon and individual ego can endanger an entire ecosystem and the well-being of many, where do we draw the line between upholding rules and protecting nature and personal property? When faced with such blatant disregard for the environment and the rights of others, what would you have done?